Look at the photo that sold you the trip. You've got it on your phone right now, or something just like it. An empty white beach, curved like a smile. Water the color of blue mouthwash. One palm tree leaning into the frame like it got paid to be there. Not another soul in sight. Now look up. Same beach. Except there are 4,000 people on it, because 3 ships came in this morning. There's a 2-foot wall of seaweed rotting along the tide line, and the smell is somewhere between low tide and a boiled egg you forgot about. A guy is trying to rent you a jet ski for $40, and I'll tell you later exactly why you should smile and keep walking. And the little wooden shack selling conch fritters that was in the video you watched? Gone. It's a duty-free watch store now. Here's the thing, and I want to be straight with you from the first minute. That photo wasn't a lie. Not exactly. It was taken at 6 in the morning in March from one specific angle by somebody whose whole job was to make sure you never saw what was standing 3 feet to the left. That's the game. The Caribbean is real, and it's worth it. And I've spent a big chunk of my life out there, and I'd go back tomorrow. But the distance between the picture and the thing standing just outside the picture is wider in this part of the world than just about anywhere else on Earth. And on some of these islands, right now, that gap doesn't just cost you a nice afternoon. It costs you real money. Sometimes it costs you a lot more than that. So this isn't a list of ugly islands. There's no such thing. Every single place I'm about to talk about has people who love it, food that'll ruin you for anything back home, and a version of itself that's genuinely one of the best places on the planet. What I'm ranking is the gap. How far apart the brochure and the ground actually are, and how badly that gap can bite you if you show up not knowing. We're going from, you'll waste a day and $40, all the way up to, I would physically take the phone out of a friend's hand before they hit book. And the one at the top of this list is not here because it's overrated. It's here because right now it's the one place in the Caribbean I'd tell someone I love to just not. Stay with me for that one especially, because the reason is worse than you think. And almost nobody's saying it straight. Bad to catastrophic. Let's go. One thing to get clear before we start counting, because it makes everything else make sense. There are 2 completely different Caribbeans, and they get sold to you as the same thing. There's the stayover Caribbean. You fly in, you sleep on the island, you eat where the island eats, you rent a car, you spend a week and a good bit of money actually inside a place. And there's the cruise Caribbean, where a ship the size of a small town parks at a concrete pier for 6 hours, unloads a few thousand people into a fenced shopping zone built specifically to catch them, and pulls the anchor before dinner. Same turquoise water in the photos. 2 totally different animals. Almost every worst story I'm about to tell you lives in the gap between those 2. The seaweed, the crowds, the prices, the scams, even some of the danger. A lot of it is what happens when a place gets treated as a backdrop for a photo instead of a place where people actually live. Keep that in your back pocket. The brochure and the ground. For every one of these, ask yourself which one you're really looking at. First rung on the ladder, the gentlest one. And it might be the place more of you have actually stood than anywhere else on here. Nassau in the Bahamas. Quick geography thing nobody in the cruise brochure will ever tell you. The Bahamas isn't technically in the Caribbean. It's out in the Atlantic, north of it. But it's the front door to the region for millions of people, So nobody corrects the map. And honestly, I'm not going to die on that hill either. Here's what you're sold. Nassau, gateway to paradise, pastel colonial charm, swim with the pigs, straw markets, rum. Here's the ground. Nassau's cruise pier is one of the single busiest on the planet. They've got something like 3,200 ship calls booked between now and 2028. On a heavy day, you've got 5 or 6 mega ships in and tens of thousands of extra people funneled down Bay Street, which has quietly turned into one long corridor of duty-free watch shops and jewelry stores that exist for exactly one reason: to separate a cruise passenger from their money in the 90 minutes before they have to be back on the boat. That's not a town anymore. That's a checkout lane with a fort at the end of it. And here's the honest safety bit, because I won't sugarcoat it and I won't fearmonger it either. Nassau is a real city of nearly 300,000 people, and like a lot of cities, it's got neighborhoods that are perfectly fine and neighborhoods you don't wander into. The State Department has it at a level 2, increased caution, mostly for violent crime concentrated in areas well off the tourist track. In 2025, the island had dozens of gang-related killings, and almost none of them touched a visitor. That's the truth in both directions. It's not the war zone some forums make it out to be, and it's not the sanitized postcard the cruise line implies. The truth sits in the boring middle, like it usually does. The one thing I'll flag hard because people get genuinely hurt: the jet skis. The watercraft rental business around Nassau and Paradise Island is so poorly regulated that the U.S. government flat out bans its own employees from renting one there. There have been serious accidents, and there have been multiple sexual assaults by operators who take a woman out to a little empty quay, and I'll leave it there. If you take one thing from this whole entry, it's this. On that island, when the man on the beach offers you the jet ski, you smile, you say no thanks, and you walk. Every time. Brochure. Paradise. Ground. A shopping mall with a real edge to it if you don't know which offers to turn down. It gets worse from here. Second rung. And this one isn't anybody's fault, which almost makes it worse, because there's nothing to be angry at. The seaweed. If you've booked the eastern edge of the Caribbean, Barbados, Martinique, Guadeloupe, the Atlantic-facing coasts of St. Lucia, a lot of Puerto Rico's east side, you've booked a lottery ticket, and you probably didn't know you were playing. There's a thing called the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, a raft of brown seaweed that now stretches, at its worst, most of the way across the ocean. In May of 2025, it hit a record, about 37.5 million metric tons of the stuff, the most since anyone started measuring back in 2011. And the islands that catch it are the ones facing the open Atlantic, on the windward side, which is exactly where a lot of the pretty coastline is. Here's what it does to your trip. Out at sea, sargassum is great. It's a whole floating ecosystem. Turtles love it. Fine. But when it piles up on your beach and starts to rot, it turns into a knee-high berm of black slime that smells like rotten eggs. That's not poetic license. As it breaks down, it gives off hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, actual gases, and in Martinique, the fumes got bad enough that they temporarily shut a school. The season runs roughly March through October and peaks in the summer, which is to say it peaks exactly when a lot of families travel. And the cruel part is how local it is. One beach is buried. The beach 20 minutes up the coast is spotless. 2 resorts next door to each other, one's fine and one's unusable, depending on which way the current curled that week. So the brochure isn't even lying. That clean beach exists. It just doesn't tell you it's a coin flip whether it's the one you'll be standing on. Some hotels now quietly bus their guests to a cleaner beach and hope nobody asks why. You're not in danger. Your trip's entire reason for existing. The beach. Just might be. Keep climbing. Third rung. Saint Martin or Saint Martin. And the fact that it's got two names is the most honest thing about it. This is a genuinely wild little island. 30-something square miles, split straight down the middle between two countries. The southern half is Dutch. The northern half is French. And it's been that way, peacefully, for centuries. You can drive across an international border to get a better croissant. That's a real, fascinating place. Here's what happened to it. It became one of the busiest cruise stops in the whole region, and the main town reorganized itself around that. On a big day, the ships stack up, and the front street becomes the same duty-free canyon you saw in Nassau. Different island, identical shops, sometimes literally the same watch brands. But St. Martin's got a special one, and I need you to hear how strange this is. The island's single most famous attraction is a beach at the end of the airport runway, where planes come in so low they roar about 40 feet over your head. That's it. That's the thing. People fly across an ocean, get on a ship, and line up to stand in the exhaust of a landing jet and film it. A beautiful two-nation island with real history. And the headline act is airplane noise. That's not the island's fault. That's what happens when a place has to squeeze itself into a 15-second clip. And here's the newer twist you should know about, because it's spreading. More and more, the cruise lines don't even bother with a real island anymore. They've bought or leased their own private strips. A corporate beach club with a made-up name. A fenced perimeter, a branded wristband, security at the tree line. You go to the Caribbean and never once touch a place where anyone actually lives. You touch the company's beach and buy the company's daiquiri. It's clean, it's easy, and it is the purest possible version of the thing this whole video is about. A photograph you can stand inside with the real country carefully kept just out of frame. You're safe, you're comfortable, and you saw nothing. Now it starts to get real. Fourth rung. And this is where the stakes change. Because now we're not talking about your afternoon. We're talking about your freedom. Turks and Caicos. And I want to be careful and fair here. Because Turks and Caicos is stunning. Grace Bay gets voted one of the best beaches on Earth on a regular basis, and it earns it. Luxury destination, calm, gorgeous, expensive. Nothing about the water will hurt you. The law might. Turks and Caicos is a British overseas territory, which means it runs its own affairs. And back in 2022, after a spike in gun violence and weapons smuggling, it passed a firearms law with a mandatory minimum sentence. 12 years in prison for bringing in a firearm or ammunition without a permit. Not a gun. Ammunition. And here's where it caught people. In 2024, 5 American tourists got arrested, not for smuggling anything, but because a customs check found a handful of stray bullets rattling around in a bag. One guy had 4 rounds left over from a hunting trip he'd forgotten about. A Florida grandmother had 2 at the bottom of her carry-on. These were people trying to pack flip-flops, not run guns. They got held on the island for weeks and months while the courts worked through it. It took a bipartisan delegation of U.S. Congress members flying down in person to help sort it out. And eventually, the territory revised the law to give judges some room, so those 5 went home with fines and suspended sentences instead of a decade in a cell. But here's the part that matters. The 12-year minimum is still on the books. It still applies. Your concealed carry permit from back home means exactly nothing there. And the U.S. Embassy has said it plainly. If this happens to you, They cannot get you out. Now, is this the island being cruel? No. It's a small place with a real weapons problem enforcing its own laws, and it's within every right to do it. The failure is that the postcard never, ever mentions it. So here's your one job. Before you fly to Turks and Caicos, physically turn every bag inside out. Check every pocket. A single forgotten round is the difference between the best beach on earth and a courtroom. We're climbing faster now. 5th rung. And now the US government itself starts using stronger words. Trinidad and Tobago. Twin islands, one country, and they could not be more different, which is the whole key to understanding this one. Tobago is the small, quiet, green one with the beaches. Trinidad is the big one. The capital, the oil and gas money, the refineries, carnival. Close to 1.5 million people. And almost all of the problem is on Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago sits at a level 3 advisory, reconsider travel, which is the second highest the State Department gives out. And they don't hand that to a beach. It's there because of violent crime, murder, armed robbery, home invasion, kidnapping. A lot of it tied to organized gangs fighting each other over turf and guns. The numbers are genuinely rough. The country hit a record of around 600 murders in a single year in 2022. And it has spent something like 10 of the last 14 months living under a nationwide state of emergency. The government declared a fresh one in March of 2026, just weeks after the last one expired, after a run of mass shootings. I want to give you the honest both sides on this, because the story isn't only doom. That state of emergency, as heavy-handed as it is, and it gives police the power to search and detain people without the usual warrants, actually cut the violence hard. The murder rate dropped a lot from 2024 into 2025. And the geography matters enormously for a traveler. The killing is concentrated in specific parts of the Big Island, in and around the capital, in a few districts everybody local can name. The tourist half, Tobago, is a different world, much calmer. Roughly 19 out of every 20 murders in the country happen on Trinidad, not Tobago. But here's the thing about a state of emergency. It doesn't care that you're a tourist. It means checkpoints. It means soldiers. It means your night out can get shut down or your movement restricted with no notice. And it means the thing that draws people here, the electric, world-famous carnival, the culture, the music, the food, that some of the best in the entire Caribbean, is happening in a place the security situation can flip on a given weekend. This isn't a mall with an edge like Nassau. This is a genuinely lovely, complicated country that is, right now, telling you itself that it's got a problem. We're near the top, 6th rung, and this one's different from all the others because nobody did it. The sky did it. Jamaica, specifically the western half of Jamaica. And let me be dead clear up top, because I love Jamaica and I'm not going to let this get misread. Jamaica's crime, which is what everybody wants to talk about, actually had its best year in a generation. Murders hit a 31-year low in 2025. That is not the story here at all. The story is a storm. On the 28th of October 2025, Hurricane Melissa made landfall on the southwestern coast of Jamaica as a Category 5 with sustained winds around 185 miles an hour. That's not just bad. That's the strongest hurricane ever recorded striking Jamaica, and it's tied for the most intense Atlantic hurricane ever measured, period. And it came in slow, which is the worst possible way, because a slow storm sits on top of you and grinds. It killed around 45 people. It damaged something like 190,000 homes and flat out destroyed roughly 24,000 of them. The total bill is estimated near $9 billion, which, for a country Jamaica's size, is close to 40% of everything the entire economy produces in a year. Whole towns in the Southwest, places like Black River, were leveled. And here's why it's this high on the list. Months later, well into 2026, thousands of people are still in shelters, still without roofs, still short on food and clean water. And a lot of that damage is in the West, which is exactly where a big chunk of the tourism is. And the machine did not stop. The resorts on the North Coast, the ones with the walls and the wristbands, largely kept humming and kept selling you the sunset, while 40 minutes inland families are living under tarps. I'm not telling you never to go to Jamaica. Tourism is a lifeline, and those jobs matter more than ever right now. I'm telling you to know what you're looking at. If you book the sealed-off resort right now and never once look past the wall, you are sunbathing on the roof of somebody's disaster and calling it paradise. And now, the top of the ladder. Number 1. The one I'd take the phone out of your hand for. Haiti. And this is the one place on this entire list where I'm going to stop calling it a gap between a brochure and the ground, because there is no brochure anymore. There's just the ground, and the ground is a catastrophe. Haiti sits at level 4, do not travel. That is the single highest warning the United States issues, the same category as an active war zone, and it's the only country in the whole Caribbean that's at it. This isn't about a bad beach or a ripoff or even ordinary street crime. Large parts of the country, including most of the capital, are under the control of armed gangs, not influence, control. Kidnapping for ransom is a functioning industry. The violence has collapsed basic services, the hospitals are barely holding, and it's gotten bad enough that commercial flights from the U.S. have been suspended and the cruise lines have quietly stopped their port calls. There was a private beach enclave on the North Coast that ships visited for years, where passengers sunbathed behind a fence and most never even knew what country they were in. Even that is shut down now. And I want to say this part carefully, because it's the whole heart of this channel. The people of Haiti are not the danger. They are the ones trapped inside it. This is the same island, and I mean literally the same island, as the Dominican Republic, which sells millions of beach vacations a year on its eastern half. Same landmass, same climate, the same beaches, geologically. One line drawn across it, a couple of centuries of very different history on either side of that line, and you get a booming resort economy on one end and a humanitarian emergency on the other. There is no clearer proof anywhere on the planet that the map you're looking at was drawn by history, not by geography. So this is number 1, and it's not close. And it's not because Haiti is the worst place. It's because it's the one where the honest answer to should I go is just no, not now. And you deserve to be told that straight, without a travel agent softening it. Now let me tell you who profits from you never hearing any of this. Because here's the question that ties this whole list together. If the gap between the sold version and the real version is this wide, the crowds, the seaweed, the scams, the walls in front of the wreckage, how does it stay that wide? Why doesn't somebody just tell you, I'll give it to you straight? Because there's no money in the honest version, and there's an enormous amount of money in the brochure. Look at the cold math of the cruise, since it runs through half this list. In 2025, the World Bank put out a report that should have been a bigger deal than it was. It found that the Caribbean earns the lowest revenue per cruise visitor in the entire world, somewhere between about $37 and $140 a head per port visit. Compare that to a stay-over traveler, the person who actually sleeps and eats on the island, over $1,600. The ship's passenger, the taxi drivers will tell you, is more like 2 beers and a t-shirt. And it's built that way on purpose. The casinos on the ship. The good restaurants are on the ship. The drink package is on the ship. And when you book a shore excursion, the cruise line takes a cut that's climbed over the years from about 10% to 50%, half, which is why the tours cost what they do and why the little local operator can barely stay afloat. So follow the money. The ship registers under a flag of convenience, so it barely pays tax anywhere. It runs on a crew hired cheap from all over the world. It brings a few thousand people to your town, wears out your streets and your reefs for 6 hours, sells them duty-free watches and its own excursions, and pulls out before dinner, having left behind, per person, roughly the price of a t-shirt. Meanwhile, the on-island hotel, the one that employs local people, pays local wages, buys local fish, is trying to compete with a floating hotel that pays almost nothing to be there. That's not a conspiracy. Nobody's in a dark room twisting a mustache. It's just an incentive, running downhill the way water does. The whole system is quietly built to keep you looking at the photograph and never at the thing next to it, because the photograph is where the margin lives. The seaweed you're not warned about, the wall in front of the rebuilding town, the airplane beach dressed up as a wonder of the world. None of it is one villain. It's a machine that figured out, a long time ago, that a curated postcard sells better and costs less than the truth. And look, I'm not standing here telling you to feel guilty about wanting a beach. I want the beach too. There's nothing wrong with sitting in the sun doing absolutely nothing. That's one of the great, honest pleasures there is. What I'm actually asking is smaller than that. And I think it's more fun, not less. It's just this. See the real place. Because the real place is always more interesting than the version they laminated for you. The 2-country island with the croissant border is more interesting than the airplane beach. The fishing village is more interesting than the watch shop that replaced it. The line drawn across one island that split it into 2 completely different worlds is more interesting and more true than any sunset a resort ever sold you. There's a specific kind of quiet satisfaction that has nothing to do with luxury. It's the feeling of understanding where you actually are, of knowing why this town sits in this bay, why that beach is empty and that one's buried, why one side of a border is rich and the other's on fire, why the ship leaves before dinner. Once you can see that, you can't unsee it, and the whole world gets deeper and stranger and better. A postcard you can only look at, a place you can understand. Those aren't the same thing, and one of them is worth so much more than the other. So here's what I actually want you to walk away with. Not never go. Just go with your eyes open. Here's the ladder, quick, bottom to top. Nassau and the big cruise ports. You're mostly being funneled through a shopping lane, and the one real hazard is the unregulated water sports. So on that island, when the jet ski's offered, you keep walking. The eastern islands and the seaweed. Check the sargassum forecast before you book. Aim for the leeward, calmer water side, and know that spring and summer on the Atlantic coasts is a coin flip. The cruise crush stops, and the fake private islands. Just be honest with yourself that a ship day is a shopping day. And if what you wanted was a country, you have to sleep on the island to ever meet it. Turks and Caicos. Beautiful, safe in the water, but turn every bag inside out before you fly. Because a single stray bullet is a legal nightmare and nobody's coming to save you from it. Trinidad. Tobago's the calm half. Trinidad's where the trouble is. It's under a state of emergency right now, so check the advisory the week you leave, not the month you book. Western Jamaica. The storm damage is real and still raw, so if you go with respect, spend your money where locals actually see it, and don't mistake the wall around the resort for the whole island. And Haiti. Not now. Full stop. That one isn't a be careful, it's a not yet. Do that and picture where it leaves you. You're standing on a beach that's actually empty because you knew which coast to pick and which week to come. You skipped the watch shop and found the place the fishermen eat. You understand the border you just crossed and the history that drew it. You paid for a country and you actually got one. That's the whole difference. That's a trip you'll still be thinking about in 10 years, instead of a photo that looks exactly like everybody else's. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean this. The comments on these are the best part, and I read every single one. So tell me, what's the biggest gap you ever walked into? The island that looked like heaven online and hit completely different on the ground, or the opposite. The place everybody warned you about that turned out to be the best trip of your life. And if you're from one of these islands, or you've actually lived there, I especially want your version, because you know the thing the brochure's hiding better than any of us ever will. Those comments from the people who've actually stood in these places are the reason I keep making these. If you got something out of this, subscribe and stick around, because next time we're staying in this part of the world, but flipping the whole question over. I want to take you to the Caribbean island almost nobody puts on a list. No cruise pier, no wall, no watch shops, and show you why the best one might be the one you've literally never heard of. There's a specific reason it stayed off the radar, and it's got everything to do with a single stretch of water that ships hate to cross. That's the next one. Until then, look up from the photo once in a while. The real thing is standing right next to it, and it's better. See you on the next one.